Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching a lesson on customized systems. Now, when it comes to customized systems, and actually this lesson as a whole, let me start off by telling you there's two main reasons that I want to have this lesson in the course. Reason number one may be the obvious one, which is if you are preparing for your A+ certification exam, there is an actual section, there's an actual objective based upon understanding the requirements, right, for the different components that are needed for certain custom configurations. Okay, and I will tell you that the different customized systems that we're going to look at in this lesson map directly to those objectives for the exam. But even putting that aside, just in general, having an overall understanding that there are different needs. Computers exist for a reason, but really it's not a reason, it's a variety of reasons. And for each different reason, well, we need a different type of system. And when we determine what type of system, well, we need to look at the various hardware and software requirements in order to make up that system. So as a whole, before we get into the individual customized systems, I want to first just talk to you about those requirements. All right, and so the idea here is knowing that you might need a certain type of motherboard. And really, it's not so much that the motherboard itself is going to need to be very specific for a certain customized system. It's that all of the other components that may be specific, certain motherboards can only support certain types of hardware, and therefore we may need a certain type of motherboard to meet our other hardware requirements, such as processor. Right? We have different types of processors, different speeds of processors. Okay, so we need to know what type of processor is needed for our system. We need to know what type of cooling system we need. Okay, and again, depending on the intensity of what's going on, we may be able to use something simple like I have displayed here with a heat sink and a fan, or maybe we need some kind of liquid cooled system. We need to know how much memory or how much RAM is needed for our system. We might have specific sound or video requirements. And then we also might have certain hard disk requirements. And the hard disk requirements could, and I won't even say hard disk, right? That's a little bit too specific for today's terms. How about we just say storage requirements? Okay, that's the generic term that I really would like to use because it's not always about the hard drive anymore. Now, when it comes to storage requirements, we could be talking about capacity. We could be talking about speed, or we could be talking about different fault-tolerant technologies like RAID and stuff like that. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into some of the specific customized systems, that, again, I'm going to map these directly to the CompTIA objectives. And I will tell you that a big part of understanding this for the certification exam is going to be just kind of memorizing, but I don't like memorizing. All right, so we could take a look at a system, we could memorize, well, you need this, this, and that. But I'd like to take it a step further and see if we can't kind of understand a little bit about why we need certain things that are listed as the requirements. So if we start out with a CAD or CAM type workstation, right? So something that's real, graphical design. That's the need that's there. Okay, we take this system, and well, what are the requirements? Well, in order to do high-end graphic design, we need to have a high-speed and preferably multi-core processor. Okay, the bottom line is you need a lot of processing power. Along with the processing power, well, you also need a lot of video processing power. So you need a high-end graphics card. They actually make specific CAD CAM based 3D graphics cards, so you might want to look for that. But the bottom line is you want to definitely have a high-end video card, probably one that has its own GPU built right onto it. And the other requirement that we have is, well, you're going to need a lot of memory. Now, the idea here, again, is not to just memorize, all right, let's see, for the graphic design workstations, we need processing, we need video, and we need memory. If that's all you can do, then that's what you need to do. You just need to memorize that. But really, I want you to understand the idea that graphic design is very processor intensive. Really, it's processor and video because it's graphic design. Think of the word graphic. Okay, so it's going to take a lot of video, and from there we could jump into, along with video, you need processing power and a lot of memory. All right, so I don't know if that helps, but that's where I would start. I would start by saying it's graphic design, so it's all about the video, and anywhere you need high-end video, you typically need high-end processing power and a lot of memory. Now, one thing that is not necessarily that far off from the graphic design is the audio visual editing station, which interestingly enough is we use those here at Train Signal, right? Because I'm in the process of recording a video for you right now, and once I'm done recording it, it then needs to be edited. As much as I like to think that I am perfect in every way, I'm not. I make mistakes. I'm human. And so you don't necessarily want to have to hear all those mistakes. For instance, I might suddenly get an itch, in my nose, and I have to sneeze. Well, you don't want to have to hear that sneeze, so we're going to edit that out. Well, in order to do that, we need a specialized type of computer. And this type of computer, what are we going to focus on? Well, again, we're going to want to have high-end video because, well, it's video editing. There's a good chance that you're going to want to have 2 or more monitors. Okay, now this is not necessarily a requirement in my mind. I've done plenty of video editing on a system with a single monitor, but I want you to know it's a lot more challenging. A lot of times when you're doing video editing, you want to have the video that you're editing over on one monitor, and you may have other certain resources that are supporting it over on the other monitor. I will also mention that dual displays is mentioned on the CompTIA objectives. Okay, so they're saying that you do need them. And I will tell you it is definitely helpful. Now, beyond video and the displays, we also want to make sure that we have high capacity and high performance disks. And the reason why is, as far as the capacity, well, video ties up about as much space as anything out there. In other words, when you look at the various types of files that you will use on a computer, your video files are larger than just about anything else, especially if you're going to be doing high-def video. As far as the high performance, well, as you are editing these large files, they need to be read from the hard drive and then written back to the hard drive. And on top of that, there is something called rendering. Okay, once you've edited, you may then render the video, and all that rendering is a process that involves, or I should say includes, writing the new video file to the disk. So you want to keep in mind that you're going to want to have high performance disks along with a lot of capacity. And the one last thing that you would need for the AV editing station is, along with video, you also probably want to have some kind of specialized sound card. Now, this is really going to depend on what type of video you're editing. Okay, I mean, if you're truly doing just the visual part of video, sound's not going to make that big of a deal. But if it's a video like this one, where I'm actually talking to you and there's sound, well, then you're going to want to go ahead and have a specialized sound card along with the specialized video card. So now let's talk about a couple different types of client workstations. This doesn't sound very specialized, right? It's just a client workstation. In a company, you have users, they sit at a desk, and they use client machines. Well, there's 2 main types of client workstations. The first would be something just called a standard thick client. It's not a term that you hear a lot, in the sense that we don't say that we're using a thick client. We just say we're using a client computer. But a thick client is one that has pretty much everything the user needs, in the sense that it's a computer, it has an operating system, it has applications, and they just kind of use everything in place. They may access resources out from a server, but all the applications and everything are running out on the client. So we want to make sure that this client meets the operating system recommended hardware requirements. Okay, so when you're putting this box together, if you're going to use Windows 7 or you're going to use Windows 8 or whatever operating system you might be using, you don't want to just go down with the bare minimum. You want to make sure you're using at least the recommended system requirements. And I'm going to add to that, depending on the applications that are being used, If any of those applications have specific requirements, you're going to need to meet those recommended requirements as well. And speaking of applications, you're going to have a variety of desktop applications that are installed right out on that client computer. Now again, the term thick client or standard thick client is not something that we traditionally use, but that is officially what it is called. And the reason it's called a thick client is because the other type is a thin client. And a thin client, that is a term that we use. And with the thin client, the main difference here is that, yeah, you're going to have a basic operating system installed, but most of the applications and the processing of things are going to be done across the network off of a server. So all you need is operating system minimum requirements, right? You basically just need to get the operating system installed, and you'll have extremely basic applications only. Just the stuff that comes with the operating system, stuff that you might use on a localized system, whereas the higher end stuff is going to be out on a server. All right, so that's our clients, our thick versus our thin clients. Now when it comes to virtualization, right? If we're going to have an actual virtualization workstation, one that is going to have multiple virtual machines on it. Okay, so just so we understand what virtualization is, it's the idea that we have, just this one physical computer, but then we have a bunch of logical computers running from within. Well, first of all, we need a processor that specifically has multiple cores. Okay, I also have listed here recommended a certain speed, but for the most part, the big issue is you want to have multiple cores. And the reason why is because each of the virtual machines are going to want to be able to operate using at least one of those cores and be completely separate from the other cores that the other virtual machines might be using. You also are going to need a lot of RAM because each of the virtual machines are now going to need as much RAM as, well, each physical computer would need if you weren't using virtualized machines. All right, so if you have one system and it's going to run 4 virtual machines, and each of those virtual machines, in order to operate properly, let's say that machine needs 4 or 8 gig of RAM, well, you have to multiply that by 4 because we're running 4 of those virtual machines. Okay, so you would end up needing 16 or 32 gig of RAM. You'd need quite a bit. And now we move into the gaming systems. Okay, when we're talking about a gaming PC, all right, here we go. What do we need? We need high-end video. We need high-end sound. We need a lot of processing power. And this is where you're going to want to have your fancy schmancy cooling system. Okay, when you get into people who are big into gaming, there's a lot going on when it comes to games. You need to have your video and your audio working, right? I mean, these days the gaming systems and the gamers, they're actually special gaming headsets that you'll wear so you can get really awesome sound. And then obviously you got to have the visuals, right? Because it's all about the graphics. I mentioned earlier with your graphic design, right? I said if you're going to have high-end graphics, you got to have high-end processor, right? So if you're going to have your high-end video and your audio, from there you got to have high-end processing power. And along with that high-end processing power, and it's not just high-end, but the way it's being tasked like crazy, you're going to want to have a high-end cooling system. Now, one other thing I will tell you when it comes to the video aspect of a gaming PC system is, well, let's be real. Gamers, they need their super high-end, amazing graphics. Okay? And there are, it's never enough. No matter how good the graphics get, they want it to be better. They want more. I mean, that's part of the excitement of being a gamer. And you can go with the highest end video card there is, and you're only going to get graphics that go so far. So what a couple of different manufacturers did, these manufacturers are called NVIDIA and AMD. They, in an effort to try to take it a step further, they came up with a technology for linking multiple graphics cards. Okay, so you could take 2 video cards, and with a special cable basically that would link the 2 cards together, you could get the power of the 2 cards feeding to one monitor and therefore get even better graphics than you could have gotten with just a single card. Now, I will mention real quick, and again, I don't know that you specifically need to know this for the exam, and you certainly wouldn't have to have this memorized even if you were putting this together in real life, because you would just go ahead and look this up. But I will tell you that NVIDIA used a technology called Scalable Link Interface, or what's just simply known as SLI, and AMD, well, they called theirs Crossfire. Okay, so that's just one extra piece of information you should know, because when it comes to gaming systems, video is everything. Now, if we move into a couple of our home systems, first we have our home theater system. All right, so what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at this really beautiful, actually it looks kind of out of date to me, those big speakers. Now they have small speakers and they give the big sound, right? But you're going to want to probably have the capabilities for like surround sound, and that's what I'm trying to show you here with the various speaker system that you see set up. Very often your home theater PC will use a special HTPC compact form factor for your motherboard. Okay, this is a special home theater system design that they've come up with. I want to give some clarification here because we're going to go in a couple directions here. You want to have decent video, right? Because with home theater, you want to have really good video, but most specifically, and that's why I've illustrated down the lower right here. I mean, the top right, I went ahead and put up a video card, but the part I want to point out is the bottom part that shows you're going to want to have HDMI hookup so that you can get your true high def. And then here is the other part where I said I'm going to kind of go two different directions here. With the video, you also very often are going to have a TV tuner card so that the system is all, one big home theater system, but it also includes the ability to bring in satellite or cable TV. Now, another type of home system that we have would be a home server. Now, this is something that we kind of keep going back and forth in popularity or lack of popularity, and whether it's needed or it's not needed. But the idea with the home server is you want to have, first of all, high-speed network connectivity, because that's what it's going to be all about. It's going to be all about having everything you need on your home network in one central place. So you want to have decent networking connectivity, because you're going to have a lot of data being put in and out of this server. And what do we use the server for? We use the server to share a printer with everybody on your home network, to do file sharing, right? It's going to store all your files. You may even want to have a RAID system put in place, right? Because you want to make sure that your personal stuff is secure and safe. And I don't mean secure from theft. The number of people that I know who have freaked out because every one of their personal items, whether it be photos of their kids or their tax documents or videos of some concert that their kids were in or whatever, suddenly are gone because they have everything on a single hard drive and that hard drive failed. So that's what I mean by secure your personal information. You may want to have RAID in place. In a home server, one of the main things that a home server is used for, I mean, everything else that we just talked about, I mean, it's almost kind of like what's the difference between a home server and just a server, right? That's really all it is. It's a server just like you have in a corporate network. Oh, but you have it at home. That makes it a home server. But one of the main things that we're using home servers for these days is for streaming media. Okay, lots of times we'll have these servers set up at home and they'll be equipped to go ahead and store different movies and music and everything else, and then they will stream that out to the other devices in your household. And a real good example of this is, a lot of the DVR technology, in the sense that rather than have every single system be its own DVR box, lots of times you'll have a centralized server, which is recording all your shows for you, and then stream them out to everywhere else. So that does bring us to the end of this lesson, and again, I picked out these specific specialized systems that we went through because, well, those are the ones listed in the CompTIA A+ objectives. They're not necessarily the only type of customized systems that are out there. The idea that I want you to keep in mind is that there are different needs, as far as why we have computers. And in order to meet those needs, well, we're going to have the different requirements. And we need to kind of take a look at that. So again, instead of trying to memorize everything I just talked to you about in this lesson, think of the idea behind certain things that go together. The idea where, again, one of the most common ones that I've mentioned a couple times is if you're going to be doing high-end video processing, right, you have a lot of graphic stuff, well, then you're probably also going to have the need for a lot of processing power, okay, and things like that. Or just the general idea of what is it that you want to do with the system, like your gaming system. Oh, well, if I'm a gamer, it's all about the sound and video. So we obviously start there, and then we expand out into the other components that support that high-end sound and video. All right, so that's the stuff I want you to keep in mind. And I do thank you for watching this lesson, and I will see you in the next one.